Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. How are you guys all doing? I'm just trying to get my camera set up. I hope that you guys are all having a great week. The days are definitely getting shorter. It's starting to feel like fall and winter, which I like. I love the summer when the days are just like so long and there's so much daylight and so much nice time to ride. But that's part of life, the cycle of life. Hi, Lori and Pam. Okay, so I have some good questions from you guys. And what other exciting things do we have going on? The weather's been a little crazy down here. It was like super cold at the beginning of the week. And then today was like the first day where it was really hot. And when it's hot here in the fall, we have Santa Ana. So it was like super windy. And the first windy day, the horses are always like a little wild and excited. So that's always a bit of a challenge, is kind of like getting them used to the wind, getting them used to everything blowing around. But most of my horses are pretty good in the wind. After they've lived here for like a few years, they kind of just get used to the wind and get over it. What was I going to tell you? Okay, so we have some exciting things coming up. I did some videos last week with Stephanie Schwelt where she drew the muscles on me. So the next few YouTube videos coming out are really going to be focused on helping you guys figure out like what muscles you should be using when you're riding, and then also how your muscles move and how you use your muscles to influence your horse, because I think that's really important. We don't often think about, like our trainer tells us to use our core, but what muscles should you actually be using in order to properly ride and properly stay on your horse? Stephanie is a physical therapist, and she's helped me a lot with my riding and also with my students. So we have those videos coming up. My husband also got a drone, which he's super excited about. So he was practicing at the beach with me last weekend. So we're going to try next week to film from above, which I think will be really cool to see the patterns and the exercises from that viewpoint as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Um, Oh, I wanted to share with you guys a little bit of some of my training struggle with my horse Kensington this week, because I think that, you guys like see me and you think, oh, like her horses always look perfect and everything looks so perfect and it goes well, but it doesn't always go well. And sometimes it can be really helpful for you guys to hear that. So Kensington is my 6-year-old, and he's a super talented horse. Like his gaits are amazing. He's really, really sensitive and fun to ride. So I took him and I did a clinic with Christine Trarig, which was awesome. And all we worked on was like the basics. So like rhythm, suppleness, and connection. And he kind of has a tendency that he gets too strong in my right rein and too empty in my left rein. So I have like a lot of pressure in my right rein and nothing in my left rein. And part of this is because his right hind leg is weak. So he kind of wants to like lean to the right instead of stepping through with the right hind leg and going into my left rein. So I've been like really working on the connection and getting him more even in the contact. But then when I wanted to go back and do my flying changes, like I could not get the flying change to the right. And I was so frustrated because I had my flying changes before, and then I've been like going back to the basics, and then my flying change to the right wasn't working anymore. So I sent my husband this text and I was like, I ruined Kensington's flying changes. And he was like, no, you didn't ruin his changes. Like, I'll come and help you. It's going to be fine. And so then he came and watched me the next day and helped me kind of get the changes back. But that's kind of training, it's like you work hard on something and one thing gets better and then everything else falls apart. And you have to backtrack and figure out what happened and fix the basic issue and then build up to it again. And sometimes it can be really emotional and really frustrating when that happens, because like I do it, I start like freaking out, like, oh, I'm just a terrible trainer. I'm never going to be able to train this horse and I don't know what I'm doing and I can't fix this. And you just kind of go down that spiral. And then what I do sometimes too is I like overwork the horses and then they get sore and then anyways, so I just want you guys to know that I have bad days too, and it's really important when you have like an issue that you have community and you have someone that you can reach out to and that gives you confidence or advice to help you get through that hard part with your horse. So that's my Kensington story. He's doing better, but it's a process. Training is a process, and you have to just like really enjoy the process and try not to get too emotional with the ups and downs. And yes, the struggle is real. Okay, Lori asked a question, which I like. So Lori says, her question is about post competition fatigue and figuring out the new training goals. We will still have some of the old ones, but would you reset your goals or start to see what ones you've accomplished partially and then reset as indicated? So first of all, congratulations, Lori, because I know she did awesome. Um, at the championships, which is so exciting. It's so nice to see when you guys do well at the shows and all your hard work is paying off and awesome. And definitely, I always say that I have a hangover after a horse show because it's, I think, very emotionally draining. Like you get really excited and a little stressed, and you don't sleep as well if you're away from home and you're feeding your horses early in the morning and late at night. So I always do feel like after the horse show, I have like a horse show hangover. And usually I have to go like right back to work the next day. So, yes, competition fatigue or a competition hangover is real. But Lori, as far as your goals, I think it's always important to like when you've had a show and you've done well, which I know Lori did really well, and that's so exciting, is to just give yourself a little permission to enjoy that, like, and to be happy with what you've accomplished before like moving on to the next goal. That's something I'm not very good at, but it is important to just celebrate, like celebrate your success, celebrate what you've accomplished. I think it's also really important after a show or a big competition to give your horse a little bit of a break, and change it up a little because always leading up to a show, like you're, not drilling, but you're working a lot, the movements, and you're working in the arena. And so sometimes it's really important to just, take a week and change it up and go for trail rides or work on cavalettis and get out of the dressage court and just celebrate. And then, yeah, for sure, reassessing your goals. So, what do you need to work on next? What do you need to accomplish to move up to the next level? Um, and that's something that I do a lot throughout the year. Like, we always do our goal setting webinar on the first of the year, which I will do that again this year because that was really fun last year. But so I set some goals for myself at the beginning of the year, and I've already like reassessed those goals 4 or 5 times because some of them like just okay, that didn't happen. I'm not doing that this year. So what other goal can I set for myself? So you always kind of want to have some direction, but it's totally okay to reassess and kind of pivot within your goals. That's something that I do a lot, and it's not failing. Like just because you change your goals or you modify them, that's not failing. It's just important that you have something that you're always working towards. Okay, next question is from Shaughnessy. This is a good question. What does your typical ride look like with one of your trained third level and up horses? How long do you warm up, school, and cool down? What are exercises you do every ride and ones you only rarely practice? Okay, this is a super question. So with my upper level horses, I always think it's important to do quite a bit of walk. And for those of you guys that have older horses, especially like at least 10 to 15 minutes of walking. I like to walk my horses around the property a few times before I go in the arena, just kind of, if possible, on the buckle. But some horses you need to kind of pick up the contact and just check in with their brain a little bit. So that depends on your horse. Um, I would say the warm up part, like where I stretch my horses in the trot and the canter, is about 10-15 minutes. And then the actual like work session, I would say, is maybe 25-30 minutes. I usually don't ride for more than like 45 minutes with a little bit of walking. I think that less is more a lot of times. So there's really no reason that you should be riding for an hour or more than an hour, because that's just too much for your horse. So, what exercises do I do every ride? This is a good one. So, exercises I do every ride are transitions, like tons and tons of transitions. So, in the warm up, I do trot, canter, trot transitions, or walk transitions are a great one. For the collection, you can do walk, canter, walk transitions. I always do several of those to get the canter collected. You can also do halt transitions. Halt transitions are really, really important to practice, and I sometimes forget to practice my halt transitions. Another great exercise is like rein back to trot. You can do that as well. Your rein back is a good one to practice. Other exercises I do every ride is circles and serpentines, because I think that circles and serpentines help to get your horse supple and loose, which is really important. Every horse kind of I do different things with, but for sure lots of transitions. And then exercises that I rarely practice. So when I'm schooling at home, very rarely do I do like a full extended trot across the whole diagonal, because that's pretty much just too much wear and tear on your horse. So I might do a few steps of extended trot and then come back, but just testing the transitions. But there's really no need to do a full diagonal of extended trot unless you have a show coming up or like your horse does something weird in it. So, yeah, you kind of want to always keep in mind your horse's soundness and health, and put exercises in that are low stress on your horse. So, when I worked with Yo Hinneman, he said to me that 3 exercises that you can do, that you can practice a lot because there are no stress on your horse: the halt, the rein back, and the walk pirouette. Um, and Cheryl, actually, the turn on the forehand, that's another one. But all those 3 exercises are very low pressure, low stress on your horse. So you can practice those a lot versus like an extended trot. You don't want to just be practicing that over and over again. Okay, Cheryl says, other than a turn on the forehand, what can I do to mobilize my horse's shoulders? So, a great exercise to just kind of get your horse moving their shoulders is to walk like a square. So, where you just turn 90 degrees straight, turn 90 degrees straight. I like to kind of do like a staircase where you like turn left, straight, turn right, straight, turn right, straight, turn left. But anything where you're just like turning and then riding straight, that can be a really good exercise to mobilize your horse's shoulders. Hopefully that helps. Okay, let's see. Lola has a question for us. With haunches in, should you be slightly on the inside seat bone or something else? Yes. So haunches in, you want to be sitting on your inside seat bone. And it's tricky in haunches in, because to get the haunches in, you have to put your outside leg back. So a lot of riders like lean to the outside in the haunches in, which is incorrect. So you really want to be sitting on your inside seat bone and have your outside leg back to push the haunches in. The reason you want to sit on your inside seat bone is because that's over the horse's center of gravity. So sitting over the inside seat bone puts your weight over the horse's center of gravity, which is super important later on for the half pass. Okay. Let's see. Um, let's see. Goldie said that she's working on half steps with her horse, and that her horse bends at the third vertebrae, trying to get him to lift his withers. Okay, this is a good question. So, a lot of horses tend to curl, and it's tricky when they curl. Curl is like when they break at the third vertebrae. So they're pull is not the highest point. I have a horse that does this, and it's tricky because horses that curl, it's really hard to get them to connect like hind leg, back, mouth, and to really push up through their withers and through their top line. So, if you have a horse that wants to curl, you really have to focus on keeping that pull up and kind of getting the horse to reach out to the bit. So, a really good exercise for that is doing like leg yields or anything a little bit sideways where you're getting the horse off of the inside leg and into the outside rein, where they're taking the outside rein and kind of like pushing their neck out and keeping their pull up. That is really good and important, because when your horse is curling and when they're bending at the third vertebrae, they cannot use their top line correctly. It's just as simple as that. What else? Okay, I have a few other questions. Oh, I wanted to talk about last night for people that are taking the training scale masterclass. We had office hours, and it's so fun to get to like talk to everyone and see what struggles they're having. But one person said that she has trouble with keeping her hands down. Like, and we all do this when we get tense. I don't know why, but our hands come up and we lean forward, which is about the worst thing to do when things are going badly. So, one tip that I use is that if I have a horse that I'm nervous about, I always put a grab strap on the front of my saddle. So, a grab strap is a little piece of leather that it hooks from like the metal eye rings on the front of your saddle. So, you can get them, they're not that expensive. Put it on the front of the saddle. And then when I start to feel my horse get tense or they might do something bad, I'll hook my outside hand over the grab strap. And you can hold the grab strap and your rein at the same time. So, what this does is it allows that if your horse gets wild or whatever, you can kind of pull yourself into the saddle and keep your hands down. So I think that's a really good thing to have on your saddle. It was funny because I was showing a horse, one of my training horses, a few weeks ago, and the the owner took the grab strap off for the show. And I went to the show and I was like, What happened to the grab strap?" And she was like, "Oh, well, I thought that you wouldn't want that in the show." And I was like, "No, like I want that on the saddle." And if you guys watch even the top international riders, a lot of them have a grab strap on the front of their saddle because, when your horse gets crazy in the award ceremony or whatever, it's just a good thing to have that you can put your fingers under it, keep your hands down, and avoid having to pull on your horse's mouth. So get a grab strap from your saddle. Let's see. What other questions? Oh, Donna had a question about the double bridle and about introducing the double bridle to your horse. So when I introduce the double bridle, it really depends on the horse, kind of how I go about it. It's always important, I think, that you have a good connection and that your horse is supple and through in the snaffle before putting the double bridle on. With most of my horses, I'll do like 1 day in the snaffle and then 1 or 2 days in the double, 1 day in the snaffle, 1 or 2 days in the double, because I think it's good to go back and forth. You feel different things. And actually, in my opinion, the double bridle will help the snaffle and the snaffle will help the double. So I like going back and forth. There are times if your horse is having a really hard time getting used to the double bridle. I had a horse that was super sensitive and she just hated the double bridle. So I just made her, like, I got her to third level and she was good in the snaffle. Then I just made her live in the double bridle for quite a while until she just got used to it. And then once she was used to it, I started switching them back and forth again. So you have to kind of figure out what works best for your horse. Which brings me to another question. So Susan emailed me that she has a horse that spooks when her horse is starting to come through. And I have a lot of horses like this. So this is not uncommon. I think we've all experienced that where like your horse you're to the point of the ride where, the blood is flowing and your horse starts to lift up their back and they start to really come through their body, and your leg aids and your half halt start to work. And then all of a sudden the horse starts to get spooky at, like, an object that's been there the whole ride. So this is not uncommon at all. And I think that it happens for a few different reasons. One reason that it happens is that throughness is basically when the horse starts to hear all of your aid. So when the horse starts to hear your leg aid and hear your rein aid. So they kind of, at the beginning, they're like ignoring your leg and your rein. And then you kind of wake them up and are like, hey, like, I'm up here, listen. And then in that transition where they start to really come onto the aids, they can get a little, like, excited, a little naughty, and, just want to spook at things. There's also a physical thing that happens, which is, often at the beginning of the ride, like, it's kind of like sometimes when you start out a workout and you just are, like, not into it at all. And, like, you just feel super sore and super tired and you don't want to work out. And then maybe like 10 or 15 minutes in, you kind of get your groove and you start feeling good and you forget about how hard it is. And the same thing happens to horses. So, the blood starts flowing and they get warmed up, and suddenly they're more into it. And when that happens, then sometimes they get more excitable about the environment. So as they start to listen to your aids more, this happens a lot with horses. When you want to get them more sensitive to your aids, guess what? They also get more sensitive to everything that's happening around them. And so that's just kind of the process. And you have to just, keep going, get them on the aids, but then also give them confidence that they don't need to get, like, too spooky or too crazy. Sometimes too, horses, when they get really round and focused on the riding, it's normal that things can surprise them more. So it's just a process. And the more it becomes a habit where you get your horse really through and listening and focused, then the spookiness will go away. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like, I wouldn't punish the horse or get after them for it, but you just want to keep getting the horse on your aids is always the best thing. It never goes well when you get upset or mad at your horse. That just never works. So, okay, I had another good question. So Marianne had a good question. She said, what is the best way to stop overriding? So I think we all do this, where we're trying too hard, like we're using too many aids just to sustain our horse. So I always say that your horse should be kind of like cruise control in your car, where you should be able to just set your horse at 7 miles an hour and they stay that speed until you either hit the brakes or hit the gas. But all of us, myself included, I find myself like driving, half halt, like just doing too much, overriding my horse. And so, first of all, it takes recognizing, okay, I'm overriding. Lori says me. So you have to just kind of recognize it. And then I think that that's part of advancing up the levels. Part of becoming a more sophisticated and a better rider is learning how not to override and how to make the aids very minimal. Because if you think about it, in the Grand Prix, right, you have to do like canters, zigzags, and you have to do one tempi changes. And so if you're working so hard just to keep your horse cantering, how are you ever going to do a line of one tempis? Like, it's just not going to happen. So you have to have in mind where you like to go, which is that, you want to train your horse to do more advanced movements. And in order to get there, the very simple stuff, like just trotting and cantering around the arena, has to be from less aids. So I'll often tell my students, like, just take your legs off, see what happens. Because when you take your legs off, it tells you a lot. If you take your legs off and your horse slows down or stops, they're not in front of the leg. And when you take your legs off, you've got to be ready to make that correction. So like take your leg off, but be ready to like give your horse a slap and say, hey, get going, and then take your leg off again. So there's definitely a retraining that needs to happen because your horse has learned that you will override and you will support for every single step. And so it's a process to go through that, to train yourself not to override, and then also to train your horse not to rely on so much input. Because it's like if you're always nagging at your horse and bothering your horse, they're not going to be able to hear things that are important. Like, for example, you're trotting and you want to pick up the canter. If you're already like kicking and pulling and kicking and half halting and doing all this stuff just to keep the trot going, how is your horse going to hear when you ask for the canter? So you really need to not be overriding. You need to have a self-going horse so that when you ask for the canter, that your horse can actually hear it and actually respond to you. So yes, Linda said you definitely you want to have correcting aids, not supporting aids. So like a reminder, but you don't want to be supporting your horse all the time. That's something I learned from Stefan Peters. He's really big on that. You know, he's like, make it simple. It has to be easier. It has to be simple because things always get more complicated and harder in the show ring. So you have to train for simplicity. Like it just needs to be less and easier so that when you get in the show ring, you can support your horse a little more. Okay. One more question from Abigail. Abigail says, I often get the words tense and braced as comments on my test. Any suggestions for correcting that? Okay, I think we've all been there. So, one thing that I always think about, tense or brace, so those can refer both to the horse and to the rider, likely both. So, starting out with your riding position in the show ring, you get a little nervous. So, where does your tension go? Do you brace in your arms and straighten out your arms? Do you brace your legs and jam your legs forward off your horse? Do you tip forward? Are you forgetting to breathe? So figure out in your body where the tension is. And then you need to break up that tension because whatever tension you have in your body is going to transfer to your horse. And then as far as your horse, where is your horse tense and what can you do about that? So a lot of horses will hold their tension in their neck. I think that's where we feel it the most. They get tense in their neck and then we just kind of brace against them. So some really good exercises are like lots of circles and bending and turning, and just make sure that your horse is really round and really supple before you go in the show ring. And this also relates to tempo. So you really want to have control over the tempo and make sure that the horse isn't rushing. Because if the horse is rushing, it's going to create tension. It's going to create a brace into your hand. And that's going to cause you to get those comments like tension and braced. But definitely breathing and relaxing your body will go a long way to helping your horse. And then focus on it at home because of course, you're always more tense and more braced at a horse show, but you'll also be tense and braced at home. So you really want to make sure that you are working on it at home and getting rid of that tension and getting rid of that brace at home so that when you go to the horse show, you have some strategies and some tools to deal with it at the horse show. So, let's see. That's it. That was a lot of questions. Some really good questions. I love hearing your guys' questions. They always give me good things to work on for videos, upcoming videos. I have a lot of good ones coming up. I know like everyone wants me to do guided rides, like where I do like an audio version and like talk you through a ride. So I'm thinking about maybe trying that. I'm not sure if it would be useful, or I don't know how that would work because every horse goes a little different speed. But I know other people do that. So maybe I'll give it a try. Anyways, that's it for tonight. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be here next Thursday to answer your questions. Have a wonderful evening, you guys.